This chapter starts with a flashback of 10 minutes ago. The contract holder was explaining to the person that had him that he had superpowers and that these powers are only attainable through killing and through massive killing. The more you kill, the more powers you have. The bully who had him was in such a shock. He was like, yo, massive murders. In the midst of that conversation, the contract holder heard some noise. Out of the shadows, a man with a weird mask and a weird smile came out saying, oh, I've been caught. The contract holder was in shock and realized it was Jack the killer. Well. Jack the killer walked nonchalantly to the contract holder. As they were talking, the other contract holder thought it was a good chance for him to attack Jack the killer, or the killer Jack. But before he could blast the bolts out of his mouth, Jack held his mouth, and it was too late for him to hold back the fire. Henceforth, they exploded from his mouth through the cheeks, and the bolts fell to the ground. Before he could come back to his senses, Jack slashed his head off with his machete, while thinking to himself that he must have used too much power. The scene then shifts to the bully, who's thinking everything that's happening is crazy, that these people that are in front of him are crazy, trying to run away. But Jack couldn't let him run away and jumped in front of him, saying, don't worry, you're going to be in safe hands, and I'm going to kill you, and you won't even know that you're dead yet. In this point in time, the bully started thinking, shit, this is how I'm going to die. At this very moment, as he was about to choke the bully out of his last breath, the protagonist finds himself in the location, and as he's strangling, he notices to say that this is the guy that killed his whole family. Killer Jack. While on the other hand, Jack was amused that the protagonist knew him. And he told the protagonist to wait his turn, that he was still playing with the other person. And the protagonist started thinking about his life, that everything that happened to him prior, or everything that happened to his parents, was all just a plaything for Jack. And as he thought this, he looked at Jack and said, you really want to play? Then let's play. The protagonist, full of anger, seemingly launches at Jack with full power as if he's going to attack. And Jack, very impatient, says, I said, wait your turn. Not knowing that the protagonist's first intention was actually to save the bully before he could start the serious fight with Jack. After checking that the bully was breathing, he then got up and said, alright, you know what? Now let's get down to business and let's... But instead of playing, the protagonist is the one who's going to kill Jack. And as he was saying this, Jack looked at him with a blank eye and launched a surprise attack out of nowhere. Lucky enough, this protagonist dodged, but the power from the punch was too much, and what was going through the protagonist's head was that if that punch actually hit me, I'll be dead by now. And Jack the killer was also amused that the protagonist actually managed to dodge Killer Jack's blow. And Jack started to wonder if the protagonist was only human, and started to think that the protagonist had actually other powers, and started to guess if he had foreseeing powers. But in the actual sense, the protagonist researched on Jack each and every day, and each and every single time that he could get. He searched everywhere he could find something. Fortunately enough, he found it from the dark web and found a clip of him beating up some people just in an alley. And from that same video, he watched it countless times to see Jack's stance and his form of fighting. And he went through it each and every single day, each and every single hour he could get, just so he could be familiar with the type of style that Jack had. And that's what he was using in his current battle with Jack. He was using stimulations from his mind to fight Jack and to pace himself. But in the current moment, Jack just continued pestering him, saying, you know what, I'm going to find out what exactly powers you're going to have. And he looked at it as an experiment. As though talking from nowhere, Jack launched another attack, this time twice as fast and twice as powerful, and it landed onto our protagonist. And our protagonist flew back into the wall. This time around, Jack wondered why or how the protagonist failed to dodge that. And while the protagonist was down, Jack was, telling the protagonist that there is no need for him to stand, that he's going to die. That he has some broken ribs, he's going to die soon. But Jack was surprised because our protagonist stood up and he said he was just getting started. And Jack was amused, happy that the fight was still going on and that his opponent this time around is strong. But Jack was still wondering what the power the protagonist could possibly have, because, he hit him, but he's still alive. As they were talking, Jack found himself behind the protagonist, and the protagonist tried by all means to react fast, but Jack was too fast for the protagonist, and then he went back to where he was standing before. And then he kept on wondering to see what type of powers does the protagonist really have, and how he managed to, read Jack's moves like they fought before. But the protagonist just told him that they've met before, and they met 10 years prior to this meeting. And he then explained to him that, he killed the family. And Jack was like, oh, that's right. Jack then remembered that back then there was a young boy, the boy who is slashed. But he was wondering how the boy survived and how the boy is here today. Whilst in the midst of thought, the protagonist also launches a surprise attack on Jack. He says, finally, you remember that it was me. And the protagonist starts throwing blows aimlessly, out of rage, shouting, die, Jack, die. But Jack continues to effortlessly dodge each and every blow that's coming from the protagonist, and starts taunting the protagonist, saying, do you think you can really hit me or land a punch with you just throwing blows aimlessly? But from nowhere, the protagonist simply misses Jack, but to his surprise, he slashes his neck with a knife. And then Jack starts to say, oh, that's what the plan was all about. You're just baiting me with all these punches, only for you to release a knife and to actually cut me. Thereafter, Jack also launches another attack to the protagonist, and it looks like he's fired up. He's so happy that, the fight is going on so well, that the protagonist has all these schemes and all these, moves planned out that is making it very interesting for him, that each and every single time that he drops, each and every single time that he actually hits him, he wakes up and he stands up, and it's so exciting. He then accurately guesses that he must have regeneratory power, because that could be the only reason why he keeps on getting up. Then there is the flashback of the protagonist saying, from the day that Jack actually slashed him, the only way that he could actually be still alive is because he actually reattached himself, or is because of his powers of regeneration that he got. While Jack was in thought, the protagonist started thinking, his recovery rate has actually decreased because he's taking in so much damage. But Jack had other motives. Jack had other plans. He wanted to experiment more and to see whether the protagonist could regenerate an organ or a leg, like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. He then asked the protagonist with a menacing smile, if I catch your limbs, will they grow back? In the protagonist's head is like, of course they cannot grow back. And then Jack said, let's begin with the experiment. Before he could know it, he launched his machete, and then it took the protagonist's leg off swiftly. And the protagonist was in a lot of pain, undoubtedly, and then screamed from all the pain that he was feeling at that particular point in time. He was like, shit, this guy actually cut off my leg. My leg is missing. What am I going to do? And then Jack was like, oh, it's not going back. Then the protagonist starts to cry. And then Jack was like, geez, what a letdown. He was really expecting, the protagonist to actually go back. But the protagonist was worried, thinking about how he's going to actually fight in this battle. But Jack thought the battle is already done, so he's going to get it over and done with, and he's going to light up a fire. Has his ritual every single time. When he's killing someone, he lights a fire. Like he did, he lights a fire. As he empties the can of gasoline, he reaches for his lighter to start the fire. And the protagonist is just laying on the floor thinking that this guy is actually a psycho. Then the protagonist starts to talk about how the ceremony is going to start, that on a birthday, people light candles. And when someone is about to die, they should also light a fire. But unfortunately, his lighter looked to have a problem. But as he looked closer, some gas came out from the lighter and went straight into his face. And he started screaming, my face burns, my face burns. And just like that, the protagonist started laughing and had a grim smile on his face, knowing that Jack the killer had a ritual of always lighting up things when he's about to kill people. And then he was fortunate enough to find the same lighter, or the same type of lighter with the bully that he fought earlier that day at school. So he got the lighter and then he tinkled with it until he put in enough poison that could kill a normal human being. But Jack can be killed. And then he realizes to say that all those blows and all those shots that the protagonist looked like he was missing was all in bait to do and to switch the lighter so that this could happen. And then when he realizes this, he starts to panic and thinking, I took my leniency on you, the protagonist. Now you're going to die. I'm going to cut you limb by limb. But by the time he's realizing, the protagonist is not there, and he's wondering, where is the protagonist? He's on top of him. He's coming down, landing straight onto Jack's back, only to slice off his head clean. And it fell off with a thud onto the protagonist. Was to think that only with analyzing a few of his moves, he actually managed to remove his head. I started thinking about back then, when he detached himself, that Killer Jack used the machete to slice him. While he was looking at Killer Jack's body, he finally said, it's over and I'm done with this. And he let out a cry of relief, knowing that you'll never see Jack again. Killer Jack is gone. Killer Jack is dead. It is over. It is over. Finally, it is over. Excuse me. Out of nowhere, the protagonist stands up short, thinking about what's happening. I don't think it's over though, for unknown reasons. Killer Jack's head is still alive, bro.